Hello, welcome to another one of our videos, and this one today I'm going to be looking at the horse stance, or the bird dog as it's sometimes referred to. And well, I've done videos on this before, but occasionally, and this is a great exercise for back pain, especially when you're in a lot of pain and you can't do standing movements. So this is the basic horse stance. But sometimes even this can be too painful. So what do you do if the basic version's too hard? How do you regress it? So what I'm going to do is show you a couple of regressions that I may use from time to time. So firstly, it's important to get good position, and what I'm sort of showing in this part right here, it's a bit hard to see because my t-shirt's the same colour as the ball in the background, but basically what I've done right now is I've moved into a posterior tilt. So my pelvis is tucked under, which is then rounded out my back, and this is where the disc bulges and all the problems in the spine are often, and also the hip, to be honest, often experienced from this poor position. What I'll often find is people will set up this without even realizing they'll move into that position. Now the exact opposite of that is the moving into too much extension. Occasionally I see this, and to be honest, I'm probably not as concerned if I see that as much as I see the first one. But ideally, what you want to do is know where the neutral is. So if you move too far into one and then too far into the other and then find halfway in between, you should find neutral, which will be for me right about there. So you can sort of see that now I just have a little natural curve. If you're not sure, you could place a stick on your back and your hand should just fit in between your back there, just in that little gap, just the palm of your hand. If your whole arm fits in there, it's no good. If none of your hand fits in there, it's no good. All right, so that's a rough rule of thumb that you could use to measure that. Now, if it's too difficult to do the standard one, this is one version that I use where we don't actually move. Sometimes it's the shoulder as well. The person they might have a shoulder injury and they just can't move their shoulder very well. This is one version where I might just lift the hand just ever so slightly off the mat. So it's just sort of hovering off the mat, and then my knee on the other side, same thing, just hovering. So basically I'm just getting a vertical lift through those two limbs, which are like left hip, right shoulder, and then obviously I would do the opposite sides as well. And all that does is just creates a little bit of instability that my core has to stabilize, but there's very little movement. It's very subtle. You can sort of see how my knee is just lifted off the ground now. All right, so just prior to that lifting of the limbs, my abdominals want to have like an engaging feeling of like wrapping around the spine to hold it nice and stable. So it's very, very, very regressed. All right, so this is a good one you could use if the standard one's a bit too hard. When I want to sort of initiate a bit more movement, maybe I might even bring in a small Swiss ball, and that's where I've got a small ball. You could use an ottoman or something like that even. I'm just giving my body a little bit of extra assistance, and then just moving through one limb. So obviously just the arm. The arm's a lot easier to move than the legs, right? Because there's a lot less. Obviously the pelvis, you can sort of see there, there's nothing really should move it here at all. And in fact, in all of these, nothing should move through there at all. But a lot easier when there's a ball under you, you're not even moving your legs. So then if I go to the leg part, and then this is where you start to see a bit of hip motion. So when the hip's coming in, and especially if my knee comes to there, what I'm looking for as a trainer is to see, is this curve being maintained if I bring full hip flexion? If it's not, I know that the hip is being dragged down and under, rolling them out. And that every time that happens is going to put pressure into there. So because it's such a regressed movement, the risk of injury is minimal. I can practice all these things and observe left and right and see if there's anything that I need to address in this very basic form, and then obviously going from just arm and just leg to arm and leg, and again trying to really watch carefully through that lumbar spine region if that hip is going to roll under as such. All right, so there's two ways that I might regress that horse stance Once I feel like I've got the hang of that, obviously I go back to that first one. And then once I've done that, this is where I can bring in a strength version. If you notice carefully on this, how I've gone from an open hand to a closed fist. And the reason for that is I'm actually trying to engage all of my arm muscles and through my upper back region there, just like I would on a row. The hand that's on the ground here, I'm actually pushing right up out of it, just like I would with a serratus anterior protraction type exercise. So I've got like the opposite shoulder pushing up, this one's pulling back. I'm engaging all through the abdominals the entire time, and then this leg here on this glute, I'm actually trying to engage it. So I've got like that sling feeling of working left leg, right arm, but engaging almost the entire body. Probably the only thing that's not working as much as this leg, but it's still got some sort of a stabilizing effect, but it's probably the least thing that's going on. And then I would hold that for say 5 seconds, and just trying to really engage all of those muscles for 5 seconds, come back down, have a breather before doing it again on the opposite side. All right, so this is a great way to bring in a bit of isometric strength. And it's sort of preparing you for the more difficult sort of things to come, which are also preparing you for those more difficult standing exercises to come. Now, one thing that I have noticed that occasionally with back pain, especially with pelvic and hip problems, is from the floor, this exercise, and you can almost see it where, and not for everyone, but because of the knee on the ground, this leg that moves in the air, there's not enough space. Like you almost sort of have to tip your pelvis sideways to be able to clear the leg from hitting the floor all the time when it moves in and out. And you can sort of see how my pelvis is tipped a little bit here, just to make space for my leg. So sometimes it's better to actually place something under that knee that's on the ground there. And this is where, in this case, I'm going to use a BOSU, which provides a bit of instability, but I could keep my foot on the ground and it wouldn't be unstable at all. Or I could even go one step less than that and use a mat on the ground. And this is where now I'll be able to not have that tilting out. See how I'm a lot more level now, where the first go I was on an angle like that. Now, if I know that this person's got like an imbalance on one side of their hip, which is creating lateral flexion and squashing the discs on one side, or there's a tight QL, all that sort of stuff, I might always want to do my horse stance or bird dog exercises on something that's elevated from the floor, just so that they can maintain a really symmetrical flat pelvis, and which will then give them a much better stability through their spine. All right, so that's something that I might need to regress with the horse stance, and then obviously then I can move into this more advanced version of being unstable. This doesn't look all that unstable when I'm doing it, but trust me, a lot of people really are when they do this, and it does bring about a lot of reflex stability, and you sort of see it a little bit there, where my whole body's sort of moving like that, and it's your job to try and keep it nice and stable. And again, you can probably see there a little bit how I rounded out then. See how far my knee came in. I just probably should have reduced my range of motion with that leg, because I couldn't control it. All right, but that's a great exercise you could use as a progression. That's different to the strength one that we saw before. It's more of, like I said a minute ago, reflex stability. Then the ultimate one of all of the exercises with the horse stance is when you add some resistance to the leg. And again, I've done a video on this once before. This can be a bit tricky getting into position. I've done it many times, so I'm okay with it, but you can use a resistance band if you don't have a cable machine, and it works equally as well. Basically, it just really rips you to shreds with through the core muscles. You don't even have to try and think about engaging them. They'll just automatically happen the minute you lift your hand from the floor. I usually will teach people just to move the leg, just get really good control of the leg, get a feel for what it's like, because you really are working the glute max big time in this one on the hip extension. Once that other hand, and you see I made a mistake there where I wanted to lift up instead of push back. Once that hand leaves the ground, it really does bring in a hell of a lot of work through that core. You can sort of see here I'm messing this one up a bit, but just to give you an idea of how you might go from regressing the movement to then getting it to work more correctly, and then in the end just getting the strength part just right. All right, so great exercise, very underrated. And this video gives you some ideas that you can use to help you get it better, and then eventually it leads to you getting more strength to be able to stand up and do things, which is where you really need to be. All right, so it's just a stepping stone to other things, but it's a very, very important stepping stone. All right, so check the description on the video. I've left heaps of article links and that for you there to check out. That'll expand upon this and give you more detail. And other than that, I'll see you on our next video.